Today's sales leader faces increasing pressure and seemingly impossible quotas. And most are told the answer is more calls, more pipeline, more grind. With over 20 years in the trenches of sales leadership, I know there's a better way. Welcome to the Authentic Sales Manager podcast, brought to you by From the Heart Business Network. I'm your host, Harry Spaight. I believe in celebrating wins, visualizing success, and making sales and sales leadership honorable. Let's go. Don Adams of Bountree Medical, an area vice president, is joining us on the Authentic Sales Manager podcast. I'm very excited because Don has been highly recommended by many already in our short tenure here with this podcast. So Don, welcome to the Authentic Sales Manager podcast. What is the good word?
Kindness, man. Kindness is the good word. Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Kindness. What comes to mind for you when you say kindness?
I think it's an overlooked strength of most leaders, and in today's society where there's so much conflict at times, it would do us all some good to just reflect and be kind to each other.
Yeah, that's really, it's a great answer. I'd like to start off each conversation with, what does an authentic sales manager mean to you, Don Adams?
Great question. Something we should all reflect on, right? But I think an authentic sales manager is really a person who's real, right? A person who not only cares about their people, but cares about, the things that they're responsible for, and finds a way to help them get there. I think that would be an authentic sales manager to me. Somebody that cares about the person, but also cares about what they're responsible for so they can be successful.
Yeah, that's really good. So when you're saying you're caring about the person, you're caring about what they're responsible for. So talk to me a little bit about what's coming to mind for you there.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is like, even in the workplace, people have feelings, there's emotions tied to their work. And we need to be cognizant of that as sales leaders, right? Not just what the mission is, not just what the objective is at any given time. We also have to think about people. And there will be issues that arise from time to time for sure. But we need to be able to understand that there's a person behind every job that we're doing, and we need to help them try and be successful. And I think if you take those two things into consideration, that to me would mean that a person is authentic as a sales leader. I can just speak historically. I can remember times back when I was running a county ambulance service where people would come into my office, and they would have issues or complaints or whatever. And I would stop them and I'd say, listen, let's get all the parties involved in the room. So we're not talking about individuals, we're talking about the issues, right? And as you start to think about things in that fashion, then you really start to address the core problems and not addressing individuals. So I think that's authentic.
Good stuff. So a couple of things that are coming to my mind. First of all, being in sales leadership, a lot of focus is on numbers and what have you done for me lately? So how do we balance that out with the responsibilities of showing genuine, authentic care and kindness towards people as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I had the perfect answer for you, Harry. I don't probably, but I can tell you from my experience, a lot of it circles around accountability and in how we portray accountability to our people. And for the sales leaders out there, they know that holding somebody accountable and being accountable are two different things, right? We really have to, in my opinion, bring the people along, and then the results will come along with them. I think Nick Saban probably said it best, that if everyone doesn't buy into the mission and where you're headed, then you're never going to have a successful team, right? Everybody needs to be on board. So holding folks accountable, making sure there's clarity in everything that we do, and then letting them know that you're there as a resource to help them be successful, not just hold them accountable. Because a lot of times when people hear the word accountability, they think about, if I'm accountable for this, then I'm going to be the person at fault if something goes wrong. What I want people to hear, and what I think people should hear, is when they're accountable, they get the opportunity to lead and create change and be a part of a movement and bring things to reality that make themselves better and the company better. So I think it's about approach, really.
That's really good. I'm reflecting here on the word accountable. The first thing you mentioned is that people view it as, I'm at fault if things go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the human tendency. It's like, I'm ready to take on the world, but please don't look at me if things go wrong because I want to blame somebody.
Yeah.
All right. So, so walk me through a little bit as to what this means for the salesperson that's on your, without naming names, of course, but someone who's on your team that you're trying to educate as to what this accountability means, whereas the default might be, shoot, you're going to blame me if things don't work out. So I love the picture you shared here. So dive a little deeper in there for us.
It's about letting people know they have opportunity, right? Not just responsibility or accountability. It's letting them know the opportunity they have. Like, look, salespeople, they know they're accountable, right? There's usually a number out there somewhere that they're chasing, and it's black and white. 99.9% isn't good enough. And
Right.
I remember years ago seeing a slide, and I used it in some of my leadership presentations that said if 99.9% was good enough, there'd be a dozen near misses at O'Hare Airport every day. Okay.
Right.
And so typically salespeople will view other cross-functional departments or other vendors or people that they work with that don't have that responsibility of carrying a number. They will start to look at that and say, man, those people, they aren't as accountable as us. We have to be accountable every day. And, I don't see the sense of urgency out of that department, or maybe they don't have the metrics that we have, or they don't have the responsibilities. They do. They do. But it's very easy for us as salespeople to say that's not the case when it truly is. I think I want to change the script on accountability with our folks and the people I work with. It's an opportunity. You won't meet many people that don't say that they want to have opportunity for growth in their workplace, growth for opportunity in their personal lives, all these different areas or arenas where they reside, right? So think of accountability as an opportunity to make something happen, to be a part of change. And there are some people that don't like change, but those who are involved in change usually find it pretty exciting. And that's how we got to start scripting some of this so that people understand that, like, being accountable isn't a bad thing. It's really an opportunity.
Being accountable is really an opportunity. We're going to pause to hear a word from our sponsor, and we'll dig right back into this here shortly.
What if every rep on your team got a personalized coaching audio message from Larry Levine every morning based on their individual strengths and growth areas?
That's what we're excited to tell you about, daily audio coaching powered by Sales Index. Each rep gets a short, practical coaching session from me they can listen to on their way to work or in between calls.
It's not generic training, it's personalized micro coaching that helps your reps make small gains every day that add up to big results.
Big things happen when your reps take effective action every day.
Learn more about how it works and get started at salesindex.ai.
Welcome back to the Authentic Sales Manager podcast. With me is Don Adams from Bountree Medical. And before the break, we were just talking a little bit about accountability and responsibility. So, Don, you mentioned this is like how we might want to reframe it so that people grasp it a little bit differently than what the traditional use of accountability in sales bullpens are. So, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think like how we frame the things that we say to others as leaders, it matters, right? And typically accountability, when you say, I say, Harry, you want to do this, you're going to be accountable for it. The first thing you hear is, if things go wrong, I'm on the pedestal taking the blame. I'm the one that's going to have to answer for this. I think truly there are a lot of people that want to do more. They want they want to grow within their current position. They want to grow and within an organization. They want to get promoted. They want to do things. All of that comes with accountability. But what it really is also is an opportunity for them to shine, an opportunity to show how they can make an impact on an organization, whether it's as an individual contributor or a people leader. Look at the opportunity you have. Now, yes, if things stumble, if there are issues, you need to address those. But being accountable is not a bad thing. It actually is an opportunity for people to grow, because you're not going to get those opportunities without being responsible for something, right?
Yeah, it's great. In doing this podcast, I've had a number of conversations where accountability keeps coming up. And for the most part, it seems like accountability is used when things aren't going well. Why does it have this negative connotation when, after all, we have been holding ourselves accountable for years and years, right? So, what's your take on all of that?
No, I think you're spot on, Harry. I mean, great commentary there, because it is a fact that every day folks get up, they go to work, they do the things they need to have the life that they want to be successful. And honestly, you're never going to have a really successful career or whatever if you don't have success in that role, right? If you're not a good teacher, then you're probably not going to be successful long term as a teacher. So you take responsibility, to your point, you take accountability. And if you have a good leader, they're going to work with you on accountability and what that means. Create rule clarity, create expectations, make sure that there's a clear vision of what good looks like. And then that accountability all of a sudden turns into not a bad word anymore. It is something that you look at and say, yeah, I'll be responsible for this. I'll take ownership. I can do this. Years ago, I worked in a large healthcare system in a large trauma center. I remember one day there was this guy that worked there. I watched him walk by a piece of paper on the floor, and he stopped, turned around, come back, picked it up, and threw it away. He says, I'm responsible for one thing, man. And I said, what's that? And he says, I'm accountable. He says, I'm accountable to making sure that this hospital is beautiful for everybody that walks through it. He says, that's why, he says, I don't have the greatest relationship with some doctors, because I'll stop them in the hallway and say, hey, you need to pick up that paper you just dropped, right? Or whatever. And, to me, nobody put that on him. He took on that ownership. He knew what good looked like, and certainly something to emulate. I've always thought about him. His name was Sly. And I think about him still to this day. And that was 20 something years ago.
Yeah, Sly definitely owned it, didn't he?
Yeah, he owned it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you clearly don't want to go into a hospital that's got trash on the floor. I mean, no matter how small it is,
Right.
well, germs are a lot bigger than that, or a lot smaller than a piece of paper. If you don't see that, what are we doing about the germ control and whatever else that might go wrong there? So,
If you
yeah,
can't take care of the little things, how you can take care of the big things, right?
yeah, I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah.
Faithful in the least is going to be faithful in much, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love this conversation on ownership. And you've got a unique background, Don, where you're in sales, but you started out saving lives, if I understand that correctly, right? Can you
Yeah.
touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, you are correct. At 18, I became a firefighter. And, just took to it. I grew up, my dad was the chief of police in a town outside Flint, Michigan, where I grew up. And so I'd seen the public safety market or industry or profession, if you will, my whole life growing up. And at 18, I became a firefighter. I was a paramedic by the time I was 21, and spent a good portion of my early years, working as a paramedic. Got promoted relatively quick. Why, I don't know. I didn't have any tools in my toolbox at that time, but somebody took a chance on me, and I learned a lot in the school of hard knocks, going, leading with a title and no skills. And then, long story short, I ended up teaching, paramedics for a long period of time, and then ended up in the hospital, not as a patient, but as an employee, leading some teams within the hospital, including like the rapid response teams, the Institute for Medical Simulation, did work with the internal medicine residency program, educating physicians, and then, took on some other responsibilities as a leader there, and got the opportunity to go to Bountree as I was ready to retire from the hospital. And I wish I could have found them sooner. It's been a really good match. I hope they feel the same way I do, but I've enjoyed growing within that organization. And so, kind of a unique thing, but there are some crossover or transferable skills between being a caregiver, paramedic, or firefighter, and being in sales. And then I found the perfect place to land, right? Like, that's our customer base. That's who we talk to every day. They're the best customers in the world, honestly. I wouldn't want to do anything different.
Oh, that's great. So going from caregiver to sales and sales leadership, we're going to take a quick pause and hear a word from our sponsor, and we'll get right back into this conversation.
Sales leaders, hiring salespeople by resume and gut feel is expensive. The interview tells you how they talk. Sales Index Hire shows you how they sell.
With Sales Index Hire, you get data-backed sales candidate screening built from the same assessment science used with millions of salespeople. See who is recommended, who's worthy of consideration, and which candidates are not recommended before you invest hours interviewing.
So stop guessing and start building a stronger sales team.
Learn more at salesindex.ai.
And we're back with Don Adams on the Authentic Sales Manager podcast. We appreciate you listening today. It is filled with tons of value. And Don, the question I had based on your background coming from firefighting and being a paramedic and getting a role of leadership in the hospital, what would you say your background, how does it tie in? What are some of the crossover traits that work so well for you in sales and sales leadership?
Yeah, I think the biggest word is helping others, right? Because if you think about, what a paramedic or a firefighter does during extremely difficult times in somebody's lives, they arrive to help. And usually just the arrival of that person makes things better. That's what I hope we do for those very same people when they need help, right? When a fire department or an ambulance service, who are our primary customer base, when they need help, I want them to know that they can count on us. And I think one of the biggest transferable skills, Harry, is trust. Is trust. When you walk into somebody's house, Harry's having chest pain, he calls 911. When I walk in that door, I have about 2 minutes to build your trust before I put my hands on you and start doing things, right? And so how I look, how I behave, it matters. It matters. And those very people, those firefighters and paramedics, when they need help and they call my folks to help them, sometimes we only have a few minutes for them to understand that we can help them. I think we've built trust over consistent behavior over a number of years, right? But within those first few minutes, we've got to make a difference. And I'm going to reflect back to one of our national sales meetings that we had in my organization. And we had a young man who had a podcast, or not a podcast, excuse me, but a YouTube channel. And he would go out and film fire departments and things. We had him launch our sales meeting. And if you can't count on an 8-year-old, to tell you the truth, I don't know who you can trust, right? But this 8-year-old said to the entire Bountree sales team that when people are at the worst part of their lives and they need help, they pick up a phone and they call 911 and they get a paramedic, a firefighter, a police officer there to help them. When those very people need help, they pick up the phone and call Bountree. And that makes you guys pretty cool in my books. That's what that 8-year-old said. And so I think it's about trust. It is also, we've used the word authentic, right?
Yeah.
When people, if you don't want to be considered just your average salesperson, when you want to be a trusted partner, when you want to be somebody that they call when they need help, you need to be authentic and you need to have built trust over a long period of time with those folks.
Yeah, amazing. I just want to listen to that conversation more. I mean, I just want to listen. You brought up that they count on you. And there is the word, right? Count on is accountability.
Yep.
And just when we've reframed, and so it's just bringing me back, is reframing the accountability is like if you ask someone, Don, can I count on you for this? Who's going to say no?
Yeah.
No one's going to say no. You can count on me. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm fired up, baby. You can count on me.
Amen, man. But you know what you got to have? You got to have a good do-say ratio then. You got to, if you say you're going to do it, if you say you can count on me, then you need to be able to step up and get the job done. And that's important. So, when we ask people to be accountable for something or to take charge of something or ownership for something, there's certain things we've got to include, right? We got to have clarity. There needs to be consistency with your leadership. You need to be conscious of what's going on. You got to be continuously checking in, being kind, making sure you're helping them get to the finish line. But more importantly, you also got to set the stage that we've got to have a good do-say ratio. And we said we were going to do this, so let's do it. You can't lose if you don't quit. Can't lose.
The do-say ratio. So I got to do what I say I'm going to do. Why is clarity so important from a leader?
Yeah. Can you imagine being held responsible for something you were confused about or you didn't have clarity on? You were out there playing baseball and all of a sudden they say, listen, you didn't make any 3-pointers. You didn't know you were playing basketball. You weren't clear. You're playing a different game than everybody else. We've got to be able to be clear. And listen, with clarity comes focus, and with focus comes incredible execution. I've watched it when people have 100 things on their plate. What's really important? And who tells you what's really important? So when you create clarity, yeah, you might have 100 things on your plate, but you need to focus on these 2 or 3 things. All of a sudden, things get real focused and you're able to execute well on the things that are important. If everything's important, nothing's important.
Exactly. Yeah. Great stuff. Sometimes you just assume that everyone knows what you know.
Yeah.
When you get into leadership. So how do you help someone with that clarity so that we're on the same page?
Like you got to show them what good looks like, right? You got to show them what the expectation will look like at the finish line. And can you imagine a professional sporting team where every individual on the field is running their own playbook? Can you imagine what that would look like? I'll even narrow it down. Can you imagine it? Let's use football as an example. Can you imagine a football team on the field where everybody's running the same playbook except the quarterback?
Mm.
He's running his own playbook because he thinks he knows what's better, or because he's unclear on what's really expected. It's a disaster. They'll never be successful. They'll never be successful. So you got to show everyone on the team, what good looks like, and create clarity. And then also say, as a good leader, you're going to set some expectations around how to get there.
Yeah.
Because I personally want to catch things before I get the report card. So I'm going to work off leading indicators, not off lagging indicators, right? I can look at the scoreboard at the end of the fourth quarter and scratch my head and go, man, we need to think about a few things we've done wrong. Or we can be active, and at the end of the first quarter, we can say we need to adjust here because we know that we're not doing and executing on these things that are going to make us successful at the end of the fourth quarter. Big difference.
Absolutely. Speaking of football, I hear you had an interesting conversation with a pretty well-known football coach. Can you share that experience with us?
Yeah, I teed you up for that one. Hey, I got lucky on a flight back from one of our national sales meetings several years ago, and I got lucky twice. First of all, I got upgraded to first class, which was really cool. But when I sat down and went to sit in my seat, the gentleman next to me had this baby blue sweater on and gray hair, and I couldn't see his face because he was looking out the window and he was pulling down the shade. And when I looked at the watch, there was this gold ND on the watch, and he turned and looked at me, and it was Lou Holtz. And I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't even think of his name at the moment. He says, "Just sit down, young man." Because he could see like I was like, this is something special, right? And he says, my name's Lou. And we talked for 2.5 hours from Orlando all the way back to Michigan. He was flying into Michigan to see Jim Harbaugh. Some of the stuff I learned from him over that time, and here's some of the things he told me that I treasure to this day, things that have helped me personally and professionally.
What would be one of those things, not to put you on the spot here, but
it's easy, and people have heard it if they've listened to any Lou Holtz YouTube or whatever. There's no right time to do the wrong thing, and there's no wrong time to do the right thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah, simple. And listen, through our conversations, that we had that day and the things I learned from him, I come out of it with, a few simple asks that I've translated to our sales team, and it resonates with folks, I think, right? I guess I haven't really measured it, but I've made it important, and I've asked people, to do 3 simple things within our organization. And that is, first of all, always do the right thing. Just always do the right thing. What you believe to be right. Even if it ends up being wrong, if you have troubles, if you stumble, you trip, whatever the case might be, at least you can have a logical conversation around why you did it because you believed it was right. The second thing I ask is to always give us your best. Just get up every morning and do your best. And the reason why I ask that is, and again, a lot of this I took from Lou Holtz, was individually, we're all going to fail at times, and we need to learn from that and continue to move forward and be better because of our failures. But while individually you have a right to fail, you don't have the right to make a team fail because you're not giving your best. You just don't. And so if you can't give your best every day, that's a problem. And then the third thing is that you need to care about one another. And if you do those 3 things in our organization, everything else will come along, and we'll be all right. And in caring about each other, it takes many different forms, right? From mentoring somebody to helping somebody when they're in a jam, to just lending an ear to somebody who's having a difficult time, to celebrating their wins with them and helping them, get their head above water when they're losing. And if you do that, it matters. It matters within an organization. It starts to create a culture where people are first and doing the right thing is first. And you can't really lose if you do those things.
Yeah, it's great. I'm listening to you, and I've had a few conversations with people that know you. They speak very highly of you as how you impacted leaders who have said, I've learned a lot from Don Adams. Has been a big influence in my life. I'm curious, as we close out here, what advice would you give to someone who is relatively new in leadership, in sales leadership? What would you tell that person in a nutshell? So you have the stage.
All right. So for the new person coming into a sales leadership position or a leadership position, I would tell them to come in, be coachable, be conscious of their behavior, understand that there are dozens of people watching you every day and taking cues from how you communicate, from how you behave, and then start to look at what you need to accomplish and try and think about a people first approach and how the people on your team can help you get to that finish line, because you're not going to do it alone. And you need to create some sort of playbook and clarity and dialogue on how we're going to get there, and then really inspire the folks and work with the folks you have in your charge to make a difference. You got to tell people that they got to understand the why, right? Once people are bought in and understand the why, then you can start talking about the how. If you get those two mixed up and you start talking about what we need to do before you have everybody on board, it's going to be very difficult because they won't understand what they're supposed to do.
That's beautiful. Don, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate you coming on and helping the listener to reflect a little bit on what accountability is, understanding the why before the how, the three things that really mattered in leadership and building a team and culture. Just great stuff. Lots to just reflect on here. Where can people find more of Don Adams?
I don't have a big presence out there. I'm on LinkedIn. Once in a while, I'll put something out on LinkedIn. I try and share things that move me or motivate me. Reshare those with the people I'm connected with on LinkedIn. But stay tuned. Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, there's definitely a book in this guy. There is, not to put pressure on it, but yes, jam-packed value.
I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and chat with you. It's been fun.
Yeah, likewise. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Authentic Sales Manager podcast. And if you know a sales leader who could benefit from this conversation, please share it with them. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us on the Authentic Sales Manager podcast, brought to you by From the Heart Business Network. If today's conversation resonated, rate, review, and share it with a sales leader who needs to hear this. Keep celebrating wins and making sales leadership honorable. See you next time.